Excellent. So I'm in a different spot today because usually my wife and I teach Wednesday nights exactly at 8 o'clock our time, and she's in the office and I'm in the dining room. But the office light, the light fixture, is done working for now. So I wanted to find an alternative place in the house to meet with everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can.
Yeah. Okay, this is a wallpaper background. It's actually real. This is not something I just chose, but it contains all the colors that we really like. And eventually, all the colors of my cheeks will look like every color in this thing. So I scheduled tonight and the next 3 weeks for 45 minutes, thinking that if we're in smaller bites or chunks, it might work out better, but we'll see how it goes. And so today, whatever it is for you, we're going to talk about the pilgrimage festival of Shavuot, which literally means weeks, because the Torah commands us that we are to count from the second day of Passover. First day of Passover, we want to focus and concentrate on the idea of gaining our freedom from slavery from Egypt. And then after that, we can concentrate on other themes and motifs, which reminds me of the little girl who was in class one day, years ago, and the teacher says, "Can anybody here use the word motif in a sentence?" And she said, "I just saw a picture of Jimmy Carter, and he's got more teeth than anybody else I've ever seen." But that has no relevance to what we're talking about. Uh, Yeah. So from the second day of Passover, we count 49 days, and the Jewish community has been literally counting every night at the end of the evening service. We count. Today is the first day of the Omer, which was a measure of barley that was brought every day in the Holy Temple. And we counted for 49 days. Actually, last night was night 48. We didn't officially count with a blessing yet tonight, so I'm not saying tonight is the because then I will have counted, and my wife and I like to do it together. Um, yeah, so, and it also says, you shall count to the 50th day. And it's always been a wonder to me why we don't officially count day number 50, but we don't. So after 7 weeks, seven times seven, we count the days and we count the weeks. And then on the 50th day is the holiday of Shavuot, which in the Ashkenazic pronunciation is Shavuos. You may have heard that term. Oh, we're going to celebrate Shavuos this week. It's the same word, except with an Ashkenazi twang instead of the Sephardic pronunciation. It's one of the three pilgrimage festivals, and the Torah tells us that during these days of Passover, Shavuot coming up tomorrow night, and Sukkot, the Feast of the Booths. Um, those three holidays are pilgrimage festivals, and you're supposed to go from your home, wherever you live, unless you're really far away. I guess you wouldn't do it. But the average person went to Jerusalem with all their stuff that they needed for sacrifices and all in this case of Shavuot, they would bring some of the first fruits of the seven species. They had to bring food. I don't know how they managed it. How did they manage it? It's a lot of days off from work. You're in agriculture, farming. So did you plan 2 weeks to travel there and then you were there for a few days and it's another 2, 3 weeks to get back? And then there's another one coming up on Sukkot, which is September, October. That's 8 days. I've never seen any kind of a article or any kind of an explanation of um, what this took up in terms of the time to do all these pilgrimage festivals. You can't just take the A train, or you can't just take a bus or a subway and get there. Yeah, this is schlepping with a donkey and a horse, or similar kinds of animals. Anyway, so it's one of the three pilgrimage festivals in the Torah, pretty much in two different places where it describes the Jewish holidays. One is in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. One is in the last book of the Torah, the book of Deuteronomy, chapters 14, 15. Those are the only mentions you have of this holiday called Shavuot. And all it says is that during this period, you count the period of the Omer. Again, it's a measure of barley. It's the first thing that would grow in the new season. It's a way of thanking God for growth, agriculture, etc. You would take 2 loaves of bread from the first offering of the wheat crop, and you brought that. That was offered in the Holy Temple. You treated this festival day like Shabbat, except on festivals we can cook and we can heat, so it doesn't have to be all prepared um, before the holiday, like with Shabbat. Shabbat, you can't cook anything, you can't use a flame, you can't light anything. But even on a festival day like Shavuot, you you have to have a pre-existing flame in order to light from there to something else. And if you wanted to bake meals, you could do meals. You could put stuff in the oven and bake all kinds of goodies, which you cannot do on Shabbat. So that's a major difference between Shabbat and these festival pilgrimage days. The Torah tells us you shall rejoice in your celebration, and it gives the indication that it started out as an agricultural holiday, as they all did. Passover was an agricultural holiday. Sukkot was an agricultural holiday. There's no mention in the Torah that it's the conclusion of Passover or the actual date. So it does connect it to Passover, right? After the first day of Passover, count 49 days, and then the 50th day is the stoppage of this Passover celebration, which has taken a while. The holiday itself is only about seven days long, but the tone and tenor of Passover continues. Why? Because we make a difference between freedom from and freedom to. So leaving Egypt, which we commemorate on Passover, is a freedom from. But just to be free from something doesn't give us our mission. What gives us our mission as a Jewish community and those who join us in this idea, what gives us our mission is the freedom to. And our freedom is to choose to live by the ways of the Torah and its commandments. So there's nowhere in any of the 2 locations in the Torah where it talks about these festival days. There's no mention that these days are days, or this day of Shavuot is a day commemorating the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, which is the big event. That's the big event. 49 days after Passover, the 50th day is this big event. But there's no mention of it at all. So it's a good question. Where did this connection between Shavuot and the holiday of the giving of the Torah, where does that connection come? Um, it's a complicated question because, as in most cases, when a custom begins, we don't always have the exact date and time. Oh, it began in the year 1593 when people started to X, Y, and Z. It's not so simple. In general, following the destruction of the Second Temple, which is in the year 70, after that point, there were no distinctive rituals. Whatever rituals were mentioned in the Torah about Shavuot, like bringing the first fruits and then bringing the measures of the barley, etc., there are no distinctive rituals without a holy temple. So now you're left with a day that has no connection. It has no title. Because whatever we used to do on that day, we don't do since the year 70, which is about 2,000 years ago, among friends. So the rabbis decided that this would be a good link going from Passover to the holiday of Shavuot. That's a good time to commemorate the giving of the Torah. And that was 3,338 years ago, where we stood at Mount Sinai and heard God and the Ten Commandments. So you may want to ask who stood around there at the giving of the Torah? Was it just the Jews? Was it all nations? But specific things applied to Jews and other specific things applied to the nations? That is a debated issue. For who heard it? Who heard whatever God was teaching regarding those Ten Commandments? There is a debate in the Talmud, which I think is surprising to know, that there is a disagreement as to what is the Hebrew calendar date of Shavuot. So one strong opinion says it's the sixth day of Sivan. The sixth day of Sivan is going to be this coming Friday. So we commemorate it Thursday night, Friday. Another very strong opinion, all referenced and based on um, different things, is that it was actually given on the seventh day. Even though God said to Moses, get the people ready for the sixth day, there's a very strong opinion that they weren't ready on the sixth day. So you would ask the question, why? They were given several days to get ready. Why weren't they ready? It's a good question. So even those that say it was actually given on the seventh, it's really hard to ignore the fact that the preponderance of opinion was that it was given on the sixth day of Sivan. And again, that's tomorrow night and Friday. One interesting proof, if you would call it a proof, that it was given on the sixth day of Sivan is the fact that beginning with chapter 2 of the book of Genesis, it says it was evening, it was morning, it was the sixth day. The way it's termed in Hebrew is Yom, which means day, and it's called Yom Ha-Shishi. It is the day of the sixth day. When it calls the end of every other day of creation, it doesn't call it, it was evening, it was morning, the end of the first day, or the end of the third day, but it's only and it was the sixth day. So Rashi, the great French commentator, about 900 years ago, he said, you know why it says the with the reference to the sixth day? It means to say that in the future, when there will be a sixth day of Sivan in the Hebrew calendar, which is tomorrow night and Friday, in the future, if the Jewish people will accept the Torah, it will be good for them. But if they don't accept the Torah on the sixth, Yom HaShishi, if they don't accept the Torah on the sixth day of this month of Sivan, everything that was created will go back to being chaotic. So the continuing of the world and its existence is all based upon what will the Jews do at Mount Sinai on that sixth day of Sivan. So is that a proof that it was given on the sixth day of Sivan? We're not going to discount Rashi, the great commentator, that quickly. Uh, on the other hand, he is one of several commentators. Very important, often quoted, studied every day. Hard to study the Torah without Rashi's commentary. But that might be like a kind of a support for the fact that it actually occurred on the sixth day. Moses tells God that they weren't ready by the sixth day. And God said, okay, I'll give it on the seventh day. But again, that's debatable. 6, 7. But you see how the way the debate plays out is how we celebrate it and when we celebrate it. We'd either celebrate it tomorrow night and Friday or Friday night and Shabbat. So it makes a big, big difference. Um, I'd like to say something about the traditions and customs of this holiday of Shavuot. But before I do that, any questions so far about the day, the tone and tenor of the day? Why do we have it? Why do we celebrate it? Why do we commemorate it? Yes, Robert.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to ask a question about that as far as the day we celebrate it.
Okay.
Um, um, Now, through my reading and research, and really didn't know exactly why there was a discrepancy. One of them had the Gregorian calendar, and another had the um, Enoch calendar. Um, does that make a difference as far as what we were just discussing?
Uh, Gregorian calendar, I think it doesn't make much of a difference.
Yes.
I
Okay.
think that that aspect does not enter into the conversation. I have to admit that I know zero about the Enoch calendar.
Okay. Well, I
Less than zero.
I I too didn't know, but I ran across it as far as referencing, cross-referencing, and the idea was that it was a solar calendar as far as the Enoch calendar is concerned, and the Gregorian. Um, I didn't really know exactly and why there was a difference, so I just thought I would ask that.
Okay, I can tell you something I do know or more familiar
Yes,
with, that there is a difference between the Jewish calendar
yes,
and the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar with the revolutions, sun, moon, whatever, takes about 364 and something days, or 365 and some little fraction. And the Jewish one is 11 months, 11 days every month short of what it is in the Gregorian calendar. Because we go by the moon, not by the
yes.
sun.
Not by the sun.
Right. So
The,
in the
the
Jewish
Enoch calendar
calendar,
goes by the sun, the solar,
which one?
the solar calendar. Yes,
Yes. So the Jewish one is a lunar calendar. So every
yes,
year we are off by roughly 11 days.
I got you.
What does that
Yes,
mean? That means that 7 times in a 19-year cycle, like first year, third year, fifth year, eighth year, ninth year, that's not exactly the years, but I'm just giving you an example. 7 times in every 19-year cycle, we have to add a month in the Jewish calendar to keep things consistent. The most important, which to keep it consistent, is that Passover should be in the spring. Because if you don't make that adjustment, Passover could end up being right after Rosh Hashanah in September. But the Torah says it's a spring holiday, so we have to adjust the calendar to make sure that it stays in the spring. Anyway, so every our calendar is split up into 19-year cycles. Thank you for not asking me what year are we in now in the 19 year. I got so many other things to worry about. So, 7 times in 19 years, we deposit an extra month, and we know which month it's going to be. It's the month where Purim is. It's called Adar.
Sure.
There's an
Okay.
Adar 1 and an Adar
Yes.
2 and in the books, it's called intercalating. And they use that term like everybody knows what that means. Yeah. Oh, next year we'll be intercalating. I had to look that up. I have no idea what that means. If it would have said next year we're percolating, I'm a coffee drinker. I like that idea, but intercalating? Anyway, yeah. Um so there's that discrepancy, but the Enoch calendar I was not familiar with. Yeah.
Yes.
John, you wanted to say something?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
I'd heard before, and so correct me if I'm wrong, that in the days of the temple, that Shavuot was also a 7 day festival, like Sukkot would have been. Like so, you have Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot. I heard that they were all three, including Shavuot, was a 7 day festival. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of it, but
Okay.
there's so many opinions in the Talmud and in other codes of Jewish law that could be an opinion. I'm not aware of it. But interestingly enough, in Israel, Shavuot is one day, and everywhere outside of Israel, it's a 2 day holiday, just as Passover and Sukkot. Um, they're a 7 day holiday in Israel, but in outside of Israel, they add another day, just to make sure with the calendar. One of the most difficult things to master is details about the Jewish calendar. Every few months, I look in a certain book and I say, now I'm going to focus, and I'm going to get this. I'm going to get there. I'm going to read it slowly with a magnifying glass. I'm going to get a good cup of coffee and a croissant. I'm going to be as prepared as I can to read this and understand it, and it eludes me after the second paragraph. It's that complicated. Now, somebody who's into math and things of that nature, may read it and go, "What's your problem with it?" Of course. But I find it very complicated. Any other thoughts before I mention a few details? Yeah, Steve.
I have a question. Robert touched on something. So you have the excuse me, the Zadok calendar as well, and the Enoch calendar. So what I have found, just to maybe try to help Robert there, um, a lot of these other calendars are rather new, and they tend to be on the line of, I find them to be very anti-Semitic.
Ooh, okay.
People, I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I've studied them, and my only problems with some of those calendars is even Shabbat changes. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. So that's where I typically would have a problem with those other calendars. And I had a question though. Wouldn't if it lives on a day, wouldn't it mean that if the second day fell on like Shabbat, would that still be considered like a high holiday or no?
Not so much a high
Because
holiday.
we would base it off of like it would not be. Okay.
No,
All right.
for right now, for everybody outside, Jewish people outside of Israel, it's a 2-day holiday because Shavuot ends Friday afternoon and it zooms right into Shabbat.
I
There's
see.
something
Okay.
there's something called the 3-day holiday, which we had a lot of, and once in a while we have it here in Israel, where it's a Thursday, Friday, and then it goes into Shabbat, which is a third restrictive, if you will, day. So that becomes a 3-day holiday, and people go, "Oh, you're going to have a 3 days without this and that." The more
Understood.
spiritual among our people would say, what are you awing about? What a fantastic spiritual opportunity to have 3 holy days in a row. What are you awing about? So it depends a lot on your point of view and how you feel about these kinds of things. Um, I can say to you that many years ago, I think it was on the front page of the New York Times, a pope, I don't remember which one it was, a pope was pictured, and the line under it said, "Here's Pope, fill in the blank. He is standing out Mount Sinai." And I said to myself, the heck he is. Not because a pope can't stand at Mount Sinai, but we, as a Jewish community, have never identified any specific mountain as the mountain of Sinai. The Temple Mount, we know where it is, how it is, dimensions, and everything else. We don't have a tradition anymore about where exactly that mountain of Sinai is. So for anybody to claim, if you go, I think I must mention this at least once, if you come to Israel and you go with a tour guide and they say, "Tomorrow morning, get those cameras ready because we're going to be visiting Mount Sinai," my first my first thing to do would be to call another tour guide because he doesn't know where Mount Sinai is any more than I do. We just lost it. We lost the So, is it important that we should know Mount Sinai? It was a momentary holiness. In the Talmud, they make this differentiation, things that have a momentary holiness, as opposed to things that have an eternal holiness. So the Temple Mount, right behind the Western Wall, we believe that has eternal holiness. But what happened at Mount Sinai was momentary. God descends, his Shekhinah, his concentrated feminine presence, uh, comes down to Mount Sinai, gives the commandments, and that's it. So it didn't retain that eternal holiness, if that makes sense. Yeah. All right. So in the interest of time, let me mention a few things about customs and traditions and ceremonies that relate to the holiday of Shavuot. One is there's a custom of people staying up all night to study. So here in Efrat, there is a 7-page list every hour, every half hour, quarter of an hour, who's teaching what on what topic in what synagogue. So my wife has created something for tomorrow night by women for women. It'll go about 3 hours. Every half hour is a different speaker. In the synagogues that I attend, there'll be 8 classes overnight. So some people will stay up all night, some people will stay up a little bit, but most people will have a commitment to going to a class or two or something. And the reason we do that is because apparently, again, according to the Talmud, apparently the night before we were going to be given the Torah at Mount Sinai, we fell asleep and Moses had to wake us up. And we might have expressed a profound disinterest by not being up and around and waiting. Oh my gosh, it's 6 o'clock. It's happening in an hour. Come on, get up, everybody. Come on. So this is called in Hebrew a tikkun, which means to fix something. Why do we stay up all night to study? We are trying to fix what we might have errantly projected by not being awake at the time of the giving of the Torah. And maybe that's exactly why Moses said, God, the 6th of Sivan was a good idea, but you see what they did last night. They fell asleep. They weren't up. Maybe they need another day. So that's a very uh, large element of what goes on the holiday of Shavuot is people staying up all night, part of the night, as part of repairing um, what could have been misinterpreted as a profound disinterest in wanting to hear God's words. There is a custom that the first night of Shavuot, which would be tomorrow night, that we eat dairy. Not everybody does, but it's a strong custom to eat dairy. The best reason I've heard for eating dairy is um, the Jewish people didn't know the laws of keeping kosher until the Ten Commandments. Because we just have 10 commandments, but Moses is up there for 40 days. There was other information he got about other rituals and other aspects of what we do as a Jewish community. So, being that they didn't know what to do with meat, how do you prepare it until that point? They're just getting the information about how you have to prepare and get kosher meat. What is a kosher meat? What isn't a kosher meat? How do you prepare it? Soaking it, salt and blood and everything else. So the safest thing was to have dairy. I don't know how satisfying that is, but that's become a very strong tradition that at least for the first night's meal that we eat dairy. Cheesecake seems to be a universal Jewish custom for Shavuot. Just about every synagogue that I know in my area, here in my neighborhood, after they will begin very early morning services after the last Torah class, and after they read the book of Ruth, which has connections to Shavuot, they will do their prayer services. They'll be done by 6:30, quarter to 7, and then there's an array of cheesecake for everybody to enjoy. So that's become a very strong tradition. Just every bakery is stocked with cheesecakes. So dairy, first night, and cheesecake, very, very strong traditions. Um, an interesting debate has arisen about when we hear in the synagogue the reading of the Ten Commandments, and one could ask the question, are there really 10? Because the first one is not commanding anything specific. It's a prologue. I'm the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt from the land of bondage. It's not a call to action. I think it's an important intro because if I'm not that, you have no reason to listen to me for the other 9, you know? So in the Ashkenazi community, they have a custom to stand when these 10 commandments are read. Whoever's leading the service will give a slap on the podium and just remind everybody to please rise. And the Sephardic Jewish community generally does not. Not because they don't have respect for the Ten Commandments, but there are two or three other times during the year where a Torah reading has the Ashkenazi community standing, like when we read the song at the Red Sea after they crossed. There's a song, and then Moses sang and the children of Israel, etc. The Ashkenazi community stands for that. There's another version of the Ten Commandments in the book of Deuteronomy, I think chapter 6. The Ashkenazi community stands for that. And the Sephardi community literally stands for nothing. All those three times when the Ashkenazim are standing, the Sephardi community does not. Not because they have a lack of regard for it or they disrespect it. They feel like if you stand for some but don't stand for others, it makes one part of the Torah more important than the other. And their explanation is there is no part that's more important than the other, as evidenced by many of the commentaries who say that when God descends his holy Shekhinah, his concentrated feminine presence on Mount Sinai, um, he gives the entire Torah in a second. There's like 620 words in the Ten Commandments, give or take. All of them were heard at this in one boom. So people who question the commentaries say, what value is that? And the answer is it has value. And then after that split second, God repeated everything word for word, etc., so they could get it all. What's the idea of giving it all in one split second? Again, to indicate that it's all part of a bigger whole. There's no part that's more important, less important. Every aspect of the Ten Commandments has no more or less importance than any other part of it. And therefore, what was the best way to do that? Give it all one split second. Nobody understands it, but it shows us that it's all equally important. Okay, I find that somewhat satisfying. Um, on the day in Israel, on the one day of Shavuot, outside of Israel, on the last days of the three festivals, and on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, there is a tradition to say a prayer called Yizkor. Yizkor means God, may God remember. And what we do is there is a prayer service, brief, where we ask God to remember the souls of the departed. So everybody stands, they say the paragraph in the prayer book that's relevant to them, from my deceased father, deceased mother, other relatives, Holocaust victims, those who died in battle for Israel and other causes, etc. So we say that, and there's always a pledge. There is a pledge for a donation. It could be to the synagogue, it could be to any cause that moves you, and that is called Yizkor. So there are Yizkor candles. I don't know if you've seen this in your local supermarket. They're smaller candles. They burn about 24 hours, which is all you need. And that will be said on Friday. Outside of Israel, it'll be said on Shabbat. Very important part, very emotional for a lot of people. Um, yeah. So that is said on Shavuot as well as the other three festivals and on Yom Kippur. If you go to most synagogues in Israel or in America, wherever you are, you will find that there's a lot of decorations of flower and greenery in the main synagogue. Flowers, greenery, all kinds of colors, leaves, branches, whatever. And that is to kind of imitate the ambiance of Mount Sinai. The ambiance of Mount Sinai was that there were apparently fences or separations that made sure, and God tells Moses to make sure that nobody climbs Mount Sinai in spiritual fervor. Oh, I want to be up there too with Moses. That's very nice, but you're not going to live a very long time after that. So God warns Moses, remember to tell the people they are not to approach. Watch, listen, but don't approach and don't come up the mountain. Don't come near the mountain. Well, you come near the mountain, but don't go up the mountain. And so what was around them? Flowers, greenery, you know. So we imitate that ambiance, and a lot of people come in the day before and they put potted plants and things like that all over inside the main synagogue. It's a very nice thing. It also adds a very lovely fragrance. And one of the traditions is that we find in the Midrash, which is rabbinic stories that explain how certain things got to where they got and how did this happen and why in this order, etc. The Midrash says that after each of the Ten Commandments, God would mention the commandment, a certain fragrance would waft all around the encampment around the mountain of Sinai. People inhaled it, they were refreshed by it, and after that fragrance died down, then and only then was the next commandment. And again, after the next commandment came another fragrance. Different, don't know. I wasn't there. Another beautiful fragrance. So we try as much as we can to kind of imitate that ambiance. Flowers, plants, branches, standing. They stood at Mount Sinai. Nobody brought folding chairs to Mount Sinai. So the Ashkenazi community stands, and we try to recreate whatever we can from that glorious moment. Um, Many people say what was received at Mount Sinai. We call it in our prayers that Shavuot is Zeman, the time of Matan Toratenu. It is the time of the giving of our Torah. That's what we call Shavuot in our prayers, the time of the giving of the Torah. So what was given? What did Moses hear for 40 days and he was up there for quite a while. So what did he hear? He probably heard a lot of things, but we understand that God taught Moses the written law, which is what we call the Torah, and he also taught him the oral tradition, which, coupled with the written tradition, gives us the best understanding of how God wants people who follow the Torah to live their lives. There's a lot of information missing in the written part that is made up or not made up, like conjured up. But there's a lot of parts in the oral law that explain what the written law um, may be deficient in explaining. So together, the written and the oral law were said to Moses at Mount Sinai at the same time. Did everybody hear the oral law or just the written law? I'm not exactly sure. But that's that we understand that's at least what was heard, at least by Moses to eventually teach Joshua and the elders, etc. Um, yeah, there's a tradition that says that God gave the first two commandments. I am the Lord your God who's taken you out of the house of bondage. Um, and what's the second one? You shall have no other gods before me, etc. There's a tradition in the Talmud that says that God gave the first two, and the people said to Moses, we are not able to spiritually contain this moment. And you can imagine that. Take a very, very fragile glass teapot, right? Very fragile, very thin, very beautiful, lovely. You boil tea in it, you put the tea in the little bowl, you seep it in this glass container. But could that glass container be put in a kiln, Kiln, or as soon as you put it in, it would just bust into pieces? Truth is, I don't know, but I'm imagining it cannot contain that level of heat. So that's how I would explain the idea that they said after the first two, Moses, please, we're not able to contain all this holiness, spirituality, etc. Why don't you give us the other eight? So according to tradition, that's what Moses did, knowing that the people are not able to grab it, not able to withhold the spiritual intensity of the moment. he let them know what the other eight are, which leads to an interesting question. If God gave two and Moses gave eight, what happens to the idea that God gave the Ten Commandments if he only actually gave two? Okay, it's an interesting debate in the Talmud and in the codes of Jewish law. Again, are there 10 commandments? Are there nine commandments? One is a preamble, and the other nine are action items, and maybe that's what makes a commandment because it's actionable. Um, Interesting, if you saw the two tablets of the Ten Commandments, and in most synagogues, when you enter on top of the Holy Ark, there is a reproduction of the Ten Commandments, five on one side, five on the other. We describe them as the five on the right side as those laws governing between a person and his and God. Those are mostly between a person and his God, even though one of the commandments is you shall honor your father and your mother. Where does God come into that? And the Talmud explains every person has three partners in his creation or her creation, a mother and a father and God himself. So in that sense, it still falls under the God category. So the first five on the right side are commandments between an individual and God, and the other five mostly begun with "Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not," and "Don't do this," and "Don't do this," are rules governing between a person and his fellow man or woman. And we see how that kind of plays out. You know, don't kill, don't lie, don't cheat, no adultery, no this, no that. So it couldn't have been all on one tablet, one through 10, one right after the other. You see, there's a wisdom to five and five. Five between me and God, five between me and my fellow man and woman. What it doesn't address is the third very important relationship is that relationship between me and me. It doesn't address what I owe to myself. I don't mean financially, but I owe a certain allegiance to God. I owe a certain allegiance in the way I behave to my fellow men and women, but I also have to treat myself nicely and kindly, sweetly and carefully. But there's no mention of that in any of the Ten Commandments. So if you were to ask me, how would I improve the Ten Commandments without throwing the whole thing off balance? Because the five and five sounds like a real good balance to me. I would say I would add somewhere, I would have added that aspect of what a person owes themselves. Um, and that question often comes up. It's come up in the last 20, 25 years uh, when I've taught the commandment in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 18. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. And it's only in the last 25 years that people would raise their hand when I teach that. And they would say, what if you don't love yourself? If you don't love yourself, are you obligated to love others? Now, before 25 years ago, I would have never heard that. But is it the sign of the times where people might make that kind of a comment? What if I don't love myself? What if I don't care about myself? What if I don't value myself? That I think that's kind of a newish way of looking at it. A couple of more things. There have been several books written by great rabbis who have made connections between neighboring across the hall commandments. I'm the Lord your God who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. Its neighbor is number 6. Thou shalt not kill. Why shall you not kill? Because I am the Lord your God who decides life and death, not you. And as you go down the list, 2 correlates to number 7. 3 would correlate to 8, and 4 to 9, and 5 to 10. So what is command number 5? Is that the Shabbat one? I know in different traditions they number it differently a little bit. Um, Is that the Shabbat one or the honor your father and your mother?
Honor your father and mother.
Honor your father is number five.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So how does that correspond to number 10, which is don't adulterate,
Yeah, do not
ki-
covet.
don't or don't covet. Right. Sorry, don't covet. Yeah. So some rabbis would say, well, here are the parents you were given. And maybe it's not healthy for you to covet other parents and say, they're much better. I wish I had them. How come they couldn't be my mother and my father, et cetera, et cetera. So, could there be a message there of it's not going to be perfect, but just be happy with what God gave you. Be happy with what God gave you, um, in the same way that you shouldn't covet other people's property, you shouldn't covet other people's parents, etc. So again, just no, interestingly, there are books that make a relationship between 1 and 6, 2 and 7, what I call across the hall neighbors. And they have some very, very interesting implications by that. Last thing I'll mention, and if you have any questions, the scene at Mount Sinai is often spoken of as in the image of a wedding. That when we got to Mount Sinai, we have the image of a wedding, namely that God is the bride, the Israelites are the groom, and the ketubah, which means the wedding document itself, is the Torah itself. And then you'll find other ways of imagining this where the people are the bride and God is the groom. And there's all kinds of different ways of looking at it. But I think the imagery is very important and it's very evocative that here are on the morning of the 6th of Sivan or the 7th, whatever you hold, that on that morning, the people should have been as anxious to greet the bride, to enter into this covenantal relationship with God. They should have been as anxious as a couple is to finally get to their wedding canopy. Okay. It didn't happen. They were off by one day. They slept, whatever the story was. But I think that that image of the wedding and the bride and the groom is a very good one to imagine. And just know that Shavuot has a great potential for huge spiritual growth. Just the day itself, what we do during the night, study, study with a partner, study, listen to a lecture, whatever it is a day afforded for great spirituality. Does everybody in the Jewish community take advantage of it? Or is that whole night just cheesecake, another cup of coffee, another chocolate covered waffle? Let's go outside and take a walk, get some fresh air. Let's light up a cigarette, which you can if you take it from a pre-existing flame and light your cigarette from it. So it's like anything, you're afforded an opportunity and you either take it and go with it and run with it and let it make an impact on your life, or you can treat it very casually and say, it's just another day where I have to get up early and listen to the Ten Commandments. So, depending on on the mindset, it either has great potential for spiritual growth on Shavuot, or it can be treated just as another normal, average, humdrum day. And it's all depends what you do with it up here. So that's kind of like an overview of Shavuot. Could we say a whole lot more about a whole lot more? We could. But does this give you a flavor of what's going on
Yes,
this coming
definitely.
Thursday night and Friday? I just tried to give us some tastes of what you would find if you were to go into a synagogue and see people celebrate it, etc. Um, yeah. So, any questions? First of all, thank you for coming. Uh, any questions, observations, comments? Yeah,
One last comment I thought was
sure,
interesting I
John.
learned this week.
Oh,
that one of the cheesecake connections or customs of where that came about, it said that one of the biblical names for Mount Sinai is
Lavnun.
Har Gavanim,
Yes, which means
and
cheese. It's a
yeah, the root word being cheese, so mountain of
yeah,
cheese.
Givina in Hebrew is
Yeah,
cheese.
yeah. So that was interesting.
Okay. I also saw a reference that it was also called Lavnun. The mountain was nicknamed Lavnun, which is like Lavan, which is the color of milk, which is the color of cheese. So, you know,
Could be all of those things.
it could be all those things. There's nothing definitive. And a lot depends on what sings to you, you know? Like sometimes I'll
Mhm.
say when we're together, I don't know if I find that wholly satisfying, you know? Uh, yeah, a lot of it, what sings to you? What might sing to either one of you may not necessarily sing to me, or the other way around. Yeah, but that I've heard that thing about gavnun or gvina, cheese. I th personally, I think after everybody was gathered at Mount Sinai, there was a big a drone flying above and wanted to capture the moment, and somebody yelled out, "Cheese!"
There you
Took a
go. I like that one.
snapshot, took a snapshot, and that way we have saved that for posterity. All of us smiling. Apparently, there were millions. There were millions of people, however you parse it out, all Jews, some Jews, everybody. There were millions standing at Mount Sinai at this great moment of revelation. Millions. So it's an interesting question. How did everybody hear what was being said? And was it heard or was it heard? Was it heard perceived? So it's a lot of interesting, mysterious things that went on at that time. But for me, it's a great holiday. Lovely. I pick the classes I want to go to. A lot of them are related to how close they are to my house because we don't drive on holidays or Shabbat. So there's a Sephardic synagogue 2 doors down from me. And I'm going to take a look at their list. And if I'm satisfied, that's where I'm going to be. Even though there are English classes about a half a mile away. But it's so convenient. And if it's got topics that interest me, that's probably where I'm going to end up. But any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Yeah, Rabbi, I had something real quick.
Sure.
When I was hearing you talk about the gathering or sort of like the betrothal of the people there, right?
Okay.
So this time of year, I mean, you find it some in the Midrash, but just this fascination I have of Babel, how they was everything was separated. You know how
Oh, how
Hashem confused the language.
yes, their one language was separated into many languages.
Yeah, and then like when you look at it, even like Kabbalistically, it's just beautiful how he brought all these people back, you know, under the quote unquote commandments, I guess, you know, whether the 10 or the oral commandments.
Right,
Just it's
right.
interesting how it's all brought back together at that time, which
That is
anyway,
interesting. It's an
I've always
aspect
loved
that
it.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Back
So
there when you mentioned the word Babel, I thought you were describing my last 45 minutes.
no,
Oh,
you did a
good.
great teaching today. No,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah, but you're right. I never thought of that. That back then they were all separated by languages, and here is a great unifier. As a matter of fact, and I guess we'll end with this unless anybody else has any more comments. Right before as they're standing at Mount Sinai, the Torah says that they stood, plural, stood at the mountain, and commentators say, what does it mean? Or maybe it says he, which it uses terminology that indicates that they were all one people. And this is something that Rashi mentions, the great commentator from France 900 years ago. It says they were there ke'ish echad, as one person, belev echad, with one heart. They all stood at Mount Sinai beating with one heart and standing as though they were, yeah, that's what it says. The Hebrew word is used as in the singular, and he stood at Sinai. Why? What do you mean? And he stood? Should say they. No, at that point, they were so unified, so anxious, so thrilled for this moment of revelation that they were standing there like one person beating with one heart, which is a very lovely image. I'll just mention this. In Baltimore, there was a all kosher supermarket, which at the time that we lived there many years ago was big. And now it is huge. Huge doesn't begin to describe it. All kosher, all under different kinds of supervision. But the first time I was there, I'm at the deli counter, deli, fish, whatever. And a lady says to the guy behind the counter, he's got a pencil on his ear. Remember those days? Some people had pencils on their ears, so it could always be ready to write and whatever. A lady says to him, I would like 2 pounds of revelation. So in our lingo, in the Jewish community, we call this, Shavuot is the day of the revelation of God and his commandments. She says, I would like 2 pounds of revelation. And I said to her, my gosh, I would love 5 pounds of revelation. You know, who wouldn't want pounds of revelation? Are you kidding me? I had no idea what she was ordering. So I asked the guy behind the counter, Kenny, I said, what is she ordering? Oh, it's a kind of a lox. It's like fish. It's like salmon. And it's called in Baltimore, they call it revelation. I said, oh, this is not a spiritual thing. No, it's a piece of fish. I thought she's ordering some, 2, 3 pounds of some spiritual food, but it wasn't. It was just a piece of fish. So that was my revelation. Anyway, any other comments? Any other observations?
It was a great class and very
Thank you.
informative. I
I
really
appreciate it.
enjoyed that.
I appreciate it. I
Learned a
appreciate it.
lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm glad we're back.
Me too. Me too. I love it. I love the preparation. Uh, so now we're way off our original schedule, not just date-wise, but we were going to be speaking about holidays that were relevant to those weeks, and those it's no longer relevant because we've passed Jerusalem Day and we've passed Holocaust Remembrance Day and we've passed this and that. So I'll come up with 3 other topics that are meaningful for the next 3 weeks, God willing, and I'll send you what we'll be studying each of the next 3 weeks, if that's good. If you want to
Yep.
suggest something on your own, what does the Bates mean on your
Oh, that's where I work. It's a surveying and engineering firm in Northwest Arkansas.
engineering?
Surveying and engineering, yes.
So what does that mean?
We do civil engineering and design for development, and
Oh,
also we have a surveying department, and it kind of helps that it's all one, so we don't have to third party it or hire anybody. It's kind of all
oh,
in.
all under the same umbrella.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. And John, how's your new job going?
Great, thanks. I'm loving it.
Beautiful.
It's going well.
You get paid?
Thankfully, yes.
Good. That's always a good thing. Okay. Listen, enjoy the rest of your day. And God willing, we'll see you next week. And shalom. If you're celebrating any part of Shavuot, Chag Sameach. Just enjoy it, and whatever spirituality you can gain from it and retain from it, you are to be blessed.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Rabbi.
Bless
Matt.
you, Rabbi.
All righty.
Thank you.
Just be well. Take care.
You too.
Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom.
God bless everyone. Shalom.
Take care.
Shalom.